Angles. What is going on, YouTube? DA Comics here. Are DC Comics better than Marvel? That's what we're here to discuss today. If you're new here, this is Around the Box. This is my live stream series where I show my new additions to my comic book collection and discuss my thoughts on them. Okay, sorry. My preview was just black, and for a second I was like, did I mess something up? New camera angle today. I'm trying out different things because when I reorganized this room, I committed the cardinal sin and put my camera facing a window. Which, if you know anything about cameras, you know anything about lighting, that's pretty much like the biggest no-no, because then it's very backlit and I get very dark and it's very bad. So I moved it over here. It's on my mic's like arm, so kind of a sketchy setup, but the lighting looks a lot better, and you can see my setup behind me, so it's not bad. Maybe I'll go with this going forward, but I wanted to try it out. But yes, are DC Comics better than Marvel? That is what we're here to talk about today with some of my comic books that I picked up. Picked up some DC Comics. Recently, actually, if you follow me on my socials, I posted on Twitter and Instagram a poll being like, if you're a DC Comics fan, are you happy with the state of DC Comics? How do you feel about them? Because I was kind of testing the waters, you know. I wanted to get back into picking up some DC books, and I wanted to see if they are good, generally. Because I know that they've undergone some changes since I really picked up a lot of DC books. But I started getting into them, and I have a lot to talk about. But before we dive into that, I have some other pickups to go through. So these are my comic pickups this week. We got this many. Five books. So not a whole lot. Obviously, I had an episode last week with those pickups, so it's been a little while since... it's been a while. Normally, I would wait another week to get some more books so that I'd have more to talk about, but I had enough to talk about here, and these are some pretty big books, so I wanted to do a whole episode just talking about these. But first, a book to dive into, pick this up today. We have Hulk number 8, Legacy number 775. This is Banner of War Finale, Part 5. And I gotta say, I was pretty disappointed with this book. I'm not sure what was going on behind the scenes, but we had Banner of War coming out, and then all of a sudden it just stopped for like a month and a half. There was no Thor comics, there was no Hulk comics, and then the finale came out after that long break, and it was a pretty underwhelming finale. So I thought that was really weird how they just kind of killed the momentum of the series and then came in with the conclusion being as, not great as it was. But it obviously starts with the hulked out Thor and a Thored out Hulk fighting each other. It kind of poses this whole, like, now we'll finally get the answer. Who wins in a fight? And, of course, they didn't actually have a conclusive winner, which is we all knew was going to happen. But it was just weird to me. I mean, it was the two of them fighting, and that was all well and good, you know, nice fight scene. And then Thor goes and rips up the world tree. And then all of a sudden Odin just goes like, hey, son, I love you. And then he like blew Mjolnir's power out at him, and it unhulked Thor and unthored Hulk. And then they just kind of went their separate ways. I don't know. I just felt like this story just kind of ended out of nowhere. Like it was just going and going, and they were fighting, and then all of a sudden it was like, boom, the end. And there wasn't really any conclusion. There wasn't really any change from the beginning of the series to the end of the series. So all in all, it just felt a little underwhelming. I'm kind of glad it's over though, so now we can continue with these books that I do enjoy. The Hulk run will hopefully get better. I haven't loved it so much so far. And Donny Cates' Thor. I've been waiting for that to come back because the next issue looks really, really good. So yeah. Not much to say about that. It was good, but a little disappointing. Glad it's over. Just put it away. Toss that down there. Next book I didn't even know was coming out today until I saw it on the shelf. It is Daredevil number 2, Legacy 650. So kind of what's the word? Not monumental. Momentous? Kind of an important issue. It's issue 650. And it was good. I'm a little confused. I mentioned it when I picked up issue 1 that I relatively was able to follow the story. Like, they did a good job for new readers with that. But this one kind of threw in this character Goldie, and I have no clue who that is. So I was a little bit lost with that. And one thing that this story kind of did was establishing Goldie as like a puppet master, a man in the shadows, someone who's been kind of pulling the strings all along. It's a similar type of story that happens in comic books, like Three Jokers, which was, establishing, the whole time these Jokers were pulling the strings, yada yada. That's kind of what they did with this, being like, he caused Elektra's dad to die, and he caused this to happen, and that to happen, and all these things. It was their way of celebrating Daredevil's history for the 650th issue. But I feel like if I was a diehard Daredevil fan, I would not like that. I mean, that would be like if they, in Spider-Man, they were like, Dr. Octopus actually sabotaged Green Goblin's lab or Norman Osborn's lab so he would become the Green Goblin, and he did that. Like, you can't do that. You can't take away other characters' actions in order to cause them to be, like, to change the history. It's a retcon, basically. They retconned a lot of Daredevil's history, but I don't know how momentous it is. I'm not a huge Daredevil fan. I don't know a lot of his history. So if there's any big Daredevil fans out there, let me know what you thought of that. One thing I really liked is at the back of the book, they did a cover gallery of all 650 issues of Daredevil. And I think that's really cool. I do like that a lot. It's fun to like go through and look and see the different eras. Like there's the Marvel Now books, and there's where is it? There's the run that I picked up for a while. There's the more recent run here at the last page, and then obviously the issue 1 and 2 down there. So all in all, it was definitely good. It's definitely unfortunate that they were hitting the milestone. That's the word I was looking for, milestone. It's definitely unfortunate that they hit the 650 milestone in issue 2 of this run, because I feel like they didn't have enough time to really set up an event for it, kind of like with Amazing Spider-Man 900. They kind of had to do issue 1 and then 650. So now I feel like the story can really kick off next issue, and we'll be able to start the run proper. So definitely going to keep picking it up, but haven't been able to really get going with it so far. But that is the last Marvel book for my pickups this week. The rest are DC books. Now, if you followed me for a while, you know that I'm a Marvel Comics guy. 80 to 90% of my collection is Marvel Comics. I've only ever had a passing interest in DC, right? I picked up New 52 Batman. I picked up, with DC Rebirth, I started picking up a lot more books. I had Batman, Wonder Woman, Action Comics, Detective Comics, Flash, a lot of those characters that I was interested in. And I've read Batman Hush and Killing Joke and Three Jokers and Injustice. Like, I like some DC Comics, but I was never, I don't know the DC lore. I don't know what happens in Crisis on Infinite Earths. I don't know all these things. I just know a few of the characters that I like Captain America, like Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, those main characters that I know. But I was picking up a lot of DC books during Rebirth times, and then that was when I kind of stopped picking up modern books for a little while. And when I started getting back into it, I mostly only got into Marvel. I tried some of the Batman books and the Wonder Woman books, but I wasn't able to get into them. It just felt like there wasn't a good jumping on point, and that was my biggest criticism with DC, was I was wanting to get back into them, and there wasn't really a good point to do that. Recently, if you saw the last couple episodes of Around the Boxes, I started picking up the new Batman run by Chip Zdarsky. I picked up the new Detective Comics, run with Ram V, and really, really liked those. I thought they were both really good. And so I just kind of felt myself getting into a DC mood. I was recently rewatching the DC movies with some friends, and I just wanted to get more DC Comics. And one of my friends is getting into comics, so he likes comic book characters and stuff, and Batman and things, but he's never really been like a comic book collector. So I've been kind of showing him the ropes, taking him to the store. He picked up the new Detective Comics issue and things like that. And yeah, I've just been into DC. So I picked up a few books that I want to talk about for DC, and specifically what I mean when I say DC Comics are better than Marvel. But before I dive into that, I do actually have one DC back issue that I picked up. Now, this is rare. I have picked up DC Modern books before, but in my entire comic collecting, 15 years of collecting, I have picked up exactly 2 DC back issues, and that is 2 old Silver Age Batman books that I picked up a while ago, and they've just been sitting in my box since. But as I've been getting into DC, I've been like, you know what? I kind of think those old, like, Silver Age and Golden Age, like, corny DC comics are really cool. And I want to start collecting them. Specifically, I want to start collecting, like, those old, corny action comics. The old, corny detective comics and Batman. And Wonder Woman, which is what this book is. I found this book for really cheap. And I just thought it was really cool. I wanted to pick it up to kick off my DC back issues collection. This is Wonder Woman number 170. I believe this is from 1967 or 68, so it's late Silver Age. The reason I love this book so much, I mean, first of all, I love the like checkered top and the old-timey Wonder Woman font, but it has the Wonder Woman gorilla, which gorillas are my favorite animal. So if I see a gorilla, I'm automatically sold. I saw a few Action Comics that had a gorilla in it. There was one from like the 50s that I really want, but it was a little bit more expensive. I got this for $5. So definitely no complaint here. But it's a great old Silver Age Wonder Woman comic. Pretty good condition too. It displays really well. I'm not the best at grading. You guys know this, but if I had to guess, I would say maybe a 5.0. Yeah, I'd say maybe a 5.0. Definitely displays really well, and that was the thing that sold me on it, because the thing I love about these old comic books is they're just very colorful and expressive, so I wanted a book that displayed really well, and the colors really pop, so I think this is definitely that. And yeah, I'm gonna start picking up some more DC back issues, so look forward to that. Obviously not super anytime soon, but as I'm getting back into picking up back issues, I've been kind of on a pause for a while because finances, but definitely looking to start picking up more Silver Age Wonder Woman, Action Comics, Detective Comics, Batman, all that stuff. Back issues for DC is an area of comic collecting that I've never really dived into, and I think I'm ready to take the dive. I think I'm ready to get over my loyalty to Marvel and start picking up some more of those. So super excited for that. Super excited about this book. I think this is an awesome pickup, and I think $5 is a really good price for this. It's actually funny. When it arrived, it was in a bag and board that had a price tag on it. I assume from the seller. I think I bought it from a store, and it said $10 on it. So I was like, they did not make a profit on this book, but I got a great deal. I got it for half off. So super happy with that. And yeah, Wonder Woman. My first DC back issue since those Batman issues. So my first new, recently. But very excited about that book. I think that's an awesome pickup. I'm really happy to have that. But the next book. This is the book that really sent me on a DC kick. Obviously, I was picking up the Batman books, and I was really liking them. But then I went to the store with my friend when I was introducing him to comics, and I saw this on the shelf, and I picked it up. And this is really what set me off being excited about DC Comics. This is Superman Space Age Book 1. I love this book. Now, this is one of DC's like premium books where it is a full, like thick book. This is what they did for Detective Comics 1000, Action Comics 1000, Three Jokers, those type of books, where it's a little bit more than a comic book, but a little bit less than a graphic novel. Like, it is still a comic book, but it's thick. It's very well bound, and there's no advertisements. So they raised the price a little bit to not have any ads or anything like that. But this book, I didn't know this existed until I saw it on the shelf, and I immediately loved the idea of it. Superman Space Age is basically a story of a period piece. It's what if the story of Superman took place in the 60s, which obviously Superman existed in the real 60s in the comic books, but this is a little bit more of a period piece, right? You're dealing with, the Cold War and Russia and all. Like, they make the world events of the 60s have a little bit more relevancy to Superman's life, like his dad fought in World War II, things like that. But the thing that really sold me on this book is it is drawn by Michael Allred, whose art I absolutely love. And I think it's perfect for a corny Superman, and this isn't even that corny, but like it's perfect for a Superman comic in my opinion. I wish he would draw the main Superman comics. But Michael Allred, he did the art on Silver Surfer with Dan Slott a few years back. And a few other, he's done lots of things, but that's the one that that was when I was introduced to his art, was Silver Surfer. And he did the art for this, and I just absolutely love it. And I'll show you some bits inside. Spoiler alert, if you're planning to pick this up yourself, you don't want spoilers for the book, heads up for that. Yes, it is going to be a 3-issue run, which I'm very excited for now to pick up the future issues. This first issue is mainly focusing on his origin story, and then ultimately ends with the formation of the Justice League. And then the next issue we're really going to dive into the Justice League and all that. But just to show you guys a little bit of Michael Allred's art, I mean, it is just so good. He has very crisp lines, very clean. I assume his wife, Laura Allred, does the colors. So they're just a real dynamic duo. I think Michael Allred's art is very crisp and clean, and then Laura's colors really just make the page pop. So this comic book was so much fun to read from beginning to end. It actually gets a little bit dark at times. I won't spoil the parts, but there are some things that happen that I was like, wow, I was surprised to see that happen. I thought this was going to be very like lighthearted. But yeah, it's a new take on the Superman origin story, and I just really, really enjoyed it. I love the art. This is some of my favorite comic book art. Michael Allred is easily one of the greats of modern comics, in my opinion. And I think his style really lends itself to Superman. I think this is what I like to see. I mean, Superman, a lot of artists draw him in this very dark, serious way. I just think Superman is his best when it's like serious, but not too serious. Like, it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's a little bit more lighthearted. It's a little bit more goofy. And then, yeah, they kind of show a different take on the Batman origin. Like, a lot of the Bat gear is developed as weapons for the Cold War, and he ends up using it himself as Batman. It shows a different take on the Green Lantern and all of that. And so, ultimately, the book ends here with the Justice League. You have Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, Green Lantern. We're going to apparently meet the Flash next issue. This is the next issue coming out, I believe, next month. And yeah, if you are a Superman fan, you are a DC fan, or even just a comic book fan, I highly recommend picking this book up. And this ultimately represents what I think DC is doing better than Marvel. Now, it's rare for me to say that DC is doing anything better than Marvel, and there's some things that I think DC is not doing better than Marvel. I think we can all agree their movies are not as good. But specifically speaking about comics, I think DC has always been better at individual stories, right? I think Marvel is better at long-running series. So you look at something like The Amazing Spider-Man. What I love about The Amazing Spider-Man is its legacy, right? It has 700, 800, 900 issues, and the interconnected story arcs, the character growth over time, things like that. I think Marvel does it a lot better. But when you look at DC, what are they known for, right? They're known for individual stories. They're known for The Killing Joke. They're known for Crisis on Infinite Earths. They're known for Flashpoint. They're known for, all of these individual stories. And I think what DC does really well is their Elseworld stories, their alternate reality stories. You look at Injustice. You look at The Batman Who Laughs. You look at, I'm trying to think of other examples. Just all of these stories that take place in like different realities, and it's a different spin on the character. It's what if Superman was in the 60s, That is where I think DC really works, because they have very recognizable characters, which, I'm going to say this, DC fans, please don't get mad at me. No, I say this with love. DC has very formulaic characters. That's not to say that they're not creative. That's not to say that they don't have depth. But I'm saying, like, what is Batman? Orphan, billionaire, master of fighting, master detective, boom. You can take that formula and plop it into any number of different stories, and then it's a really interesting take on it. It's, well, what if that Batman became the Joker? What if that Batman was in a world of this? What if that Batman was in this world? And that's where they can have these individual stories set in different settings and make it interesting. Same with Superman. What is Superman? He's an alien who came to Earth. He's super strong. He can fly. He shoots lasers. All right, boom. What if he was in the 60s? You look at the Flash. He's super fast. boom. Like, all of the characters are relatively straightforward, and they can be plopped into different contexts to make them really interesting. Whereas Marvel is a little bit different. It's like, well, what is Spider-Man? Well, he has spider powers. Sure, you can plug that into different, and they try to with Spider-Verse. But ultimately, what makes Spider-Man great is Peter Parker, and people love the growth of his character and the history behind him. So that's where I think DC is better, is these one-offs. You know, I'm going to pick up these 3 issues of Superman Space Age, and I'm going to freaking love them. You know, this comic book is the comic book that I've been the most excited about that I've picked up in a while. More than any Marvel comic, because I just thought it was really cool. I mean, there's Marvel books that I pick up and I'm like, I'm just picking it up because I am, you know? But this was a book that, like, I genuinely got excited about when I found it on the shelf and going home and was excited to read it, and I'm genuinely excited for the next issue. So I think that's something DC's doing a lot better, is these, like, one-offs, and you have the 3 Jokers, and right now they're doing Dark Crisis I don't know anything about, but I'm interested in reading it because that's what DC does best. So that's ultimately where I think DC is better than Marvel, is these, you know, alternate reality stories, these one-offs. And speaking of that, the last book that I picked up is exactly that. And this book came out today. I had no idea this book existed. I don't follow DC Comics news, so I don't really know what they're doing, what's coming out. You know, I mostly just find stuff on the shelf. I'm trying to follow it a little bit better now. But I saw this on the shelf and ended up finding out what it was, and basically I'll just show it to you. We got Batman One Bad Day, The Riddler #1. This is another premium book. It's a thick bound book. I'm actually going to take it out. It was a little bit less than Superman Space Age. I think it was less pages. But again, no ads. Large book. You can see the thickness there. This book, if you don't know, if you're not a DC fan or you just are out of the loop like I am, this book is basically Batman stories that they're putting out. I'm trying to, like, collect my thoughts. They are doing a series of one-offs in this premium format for different Batman villains. Now, in case you didn't get it from the title Batman One Bad Day, these are kind of meant to be homage or continuation of the formula that was used in The Killing Joke. Now, what do I mean by that? The Killing Joke is all about one bad day. Joker's saying that all it takes is one bad day to go crazy. He tries to give Jim Gordon one bad day. And that's kind of the arc of that story. And the formula that I'm referring to is that in The Killing Joke, it flashes back and forth between his origin story and then the current events of him doing whatever he's doing as the villain. And then ultimately it ends with that kind of ambiguous fade to black, does Batman kill the Joker? That is the exact formula that they followed for this story. And it was really freaking good. The first issue is the Riddler. They're coming out with, I think, Two-Face next month, and then later on they're going to do Clayface, Catwoman, Bane, all these big Batman villains. They're not doing one for the Joker, obviously, because his was The Killing Joke. But this was so good. The art is like a very interesting kind of painted style. But you'll notice while reading this, I don't want to spoil it because I really think that you guys should just go and pick it up yourselves. If you're a Batman fan, it's a must-read. I know I don't have much authority to the Batman fans, but Batman is my favorite DC character, and I really think this is a must-read for Batman fans, especially if you liked The Killing Joke. But this follows the exact same formula. The paneling, it has the exact same 3x3 paneling that The Killing Joke had, and Three Jokers, because Three Jokers was basically a sequel to The Killing Joke. And it establishes the Joker, or not the Joker, sorry, the Riddler, doing some things in the present. He even references the events of Killing Joke, basically saying that he's the one who gave Joker the intel to be able to get past Jim Gordon's security and shoot Barbara. And then it flashes back and forth to Riddler's origin and current events. Now, I don't know how much we have seen of Riddler's origin in the past. So I don't know if this is new or if this is just a different take on it. But I didn't really know Riddler's origin, so it was interesting to see him as a child and get a little bit of background of why he is the way he is. And it does exactly what The Killing Joke does. It bounces back and forth between his past and then the current events. This isn't the same Riddler comic that Paul Dano was announced to be writing. This is not written by Paul Dano. This is written by Tom King, who wrote the DC Rebirth Batman run. So this is not written by Paul Dano. I think that was something separate, but I'm not entirely sure. Like I said, I don't know a whole lot about DC's slate of comics. But, again, I'm not going to spoil anything about the story of this book, just the structure of it. The story was phenomenal. Phenomenal. I mean, I was reading it and I was blown away. It was incredibly good. It really, really just... They advertised One Bad Day as, we want to tell the definitive stories of these villains, right? And there's a reason they structured it based on The Killing Joke, and that's because The Killing Joke is the definitive Joker story. And so they basically wanted to do that for these other villains. Now, on the surface, that sounds like a bad idea. I would think, oh, they're trying to just recreate something that worked and it's not going to work. But I would be completely wrong if I thought that, because in my opinion, this was easily a definitive Riddler story. I mean, when I think of Riddler stories that I know of, there's, Zero Year during New 52 that was really good. I haven't read too many. But this was such a good depiction of the Riddler. It really made him scary. Genuinely frightening. It showed his origin, and it kind of gives you a little bit of sympathy, like seeing Joker's origin in The Killing Joke makes you feel a little bad for him. And there's a bit of symmetry between, again, no spoilies. But if you consider yourself a Batman fan, or even if you're not a Batman fan and you've been interested or thought about getting into it, this is really the book to pick up. It's so dang good. And this is a minor spoiler, so if you don't want any spoilers, then don't mute the video for the next couple minutes. But like I said, there's symmetry between this and The Killing Joke. This book also ends with an ambiguous fade to black, heavily implying that he kills the Riddler. Now, obviously, this is not set in the main comic universe. This doesn't mean Riddler's dead now. And that's exactly like I was saying. DC does better than Marvel. Is these just one-offs? Like, this doesn't have to be set in the main universe. This doesn't have to have consequences for the main continuity, because the story itself is impactful on its own. And I like to think of it as its own story. It doesn't matter what it's connected to. Normally, when I pick up a Marvel comic book, I'm thinking, okay, what impact does this have on the overall continuity, right? With DC, that's not the case. This is just a good story on its own. I would recommend this to someone. I would say, hey, you're new to comic books? Here you go. You don't need to know anything about the past of Batman. You don't need to know anything about the Riddler. You don't need to know anything about the DC continuity or the mythos or any of that. Here's just a good Batman story. And I think that's really awesome. And I really, really loved it. And the way they set up the ending, even though I could have predicted it, knowing, once I caught on to the fact that it was mirroring The Killing Joke, and knowing that the one thing that The Killing Joke is known for is that it ends with an ambiguous fade to black, does the Batman kill the Joker type of thing. The way they set it up in this book is so good. Like, I like to believe Batman did kill the Joker, or kill the Riddler. I think he did. And it's just really cool. So if you're... Seriously, can't recommend it enough. It's a 10 out of 10. I loved it. I'm taking my friend to the comic store later so he can pick it up, the one who's getting into comics that I mentioned. Because it is seriously phenomenal. I cannot wait for the future issues of One Bad Day. They're doing Two-Face next. I think that's going to be awesome. Two-Face is a really cool character, and there's a lot of depth to dive into there. And Bane and all these characters. I'm super excited. So, seriously, 10 out of 10. One Bad Day, easily my pick of the week, and that's topping Superman Space Age, which I was also very excited about. So, when I say that DC is better than Marvel, obviously I don't think overall DC is better than Marvel. My favorite is still Marvel. Marvel comics are still my main go-to. But these two comic books alone absolutely blew my mind and sold me on DC Comics, and I think I'm a huge fan of their just premium comic format. I love these two comics. These are both easily 10 out of 10s. These are probably the most exciting comic books that I have picked up in months, is these two books. So you can tell I'm excited right now. You can tell I don't give praise like this very often, especially to DC. So that's definitely high praise. And back on the Paul Dano thing, they're writing a year one Riddler 6-issue run that's coming out this October. I remember hearing about that. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I remember hearing that Paul Dano was writing a Riddler story. I think that's super cool. And again, that's probably not going to be set in the main comic book universe. I don't know what, is it Earth 1? I don't know what they call it, but that'll probably be really good. I'll probably pick that up. I mean, that's just going to be a good story. And I think that's what DC really prioritizes, is let's just write the definitive Joker story. Or not, I keep saying Joker. The definitive Riddler story. And that's exactly what they did, in my opinion. Again, I don't have a whole lot of knowledge of past Riddler stories, but I think this is easily one of the best. So that's it for this episode of Around the Boxes. That's all my pickups that I have. Just a few new few Marvel books, and then a couple DC books that absolutely blew my mind, and my first DC back issue in years. So definitely looking like DC is the way to go for me this episode. Obviously, again, I still love Marvel Comics. They're still my favorite, but I'm opening my mind and my heart to accepting DC Comics a little bit more than I have in the past. You know, looking at the back issues, looking at more options in the modern issues. I'm looking to start picking up Action Comics, Wonder Woman, new issues, and things like that. So, super exciting. It's just more comic books to enjoy, and more things to make my wallet sad. But yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, hit that like button. Definitely comment your thoughts on any of these books down below. If you picked up this book, what were your thoughts? You know, let me know in the comments. I read every single comment. Thank you, Noel Martinez. Hopefully I said your name right. Noel, for chatting live. Always appreciate someone hanging out in the chat. So appreciate you being here. And yeah, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. We try to do these every week, every other week when I have enough comics to talk about. And then also gonna shamelessly plug real quick. If you guys missed it, or if you're new here, we have a new episode of Webheads Comic Club went up a few days ago. This is our podcast where we are reading through every single issue of The Amazing Spider-Man and reviewing them and talking about them. So this is episode 9. We just read Amazing Spider-Man 39 and 40, so it was a big Green Goblin episode, as you can see by him in the thumbnail. So definitely go and check that out if you haven't seen that. We have been really having a blast doing that. We have a new episode coming again soon. But yeah, we're really excited about that, so I just want to plug that real quick so you guys can go and check that out. But that's my shameless plug. I'm going to leave on that note. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out. Have a good day. And go read some DC Comics, man. Go pick up One Bad Day. Seriously. Go pick it up. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.